Rev up your engines!
Well, here's Tesla again. One of their full self-driving cars caused an 8-car pileup in San Francisco on the Bay Bridge. The driver said it braked unexpectedly by itself, and then 8 cars all piled in behind him. 9 people were treated for minor injuries because they weren't going that fast. That's the amazing thing. And this crash, ironically enough, occurred just a few hours after Elon Musk said Tesla's full self-assist driving is now available for everyone in North America who requests it. Now, previously, you probably don't know, but previously, Tesla only allowed the full self-driving to go to drivers who had great driving records. They weren't letting anybody get it because, of course, they want to stack the deck. They don't want these things getting in a bunch of wrecks. Which to me is kind of hilarious because you take their fancy ones, some of them go 200 miles an hour, insane acceleration. Of course they're going to get in wrecks. You know, you sell fast cars, people who drive them drive fast. He tried to stack the deck by saying, well, only the good drivers can get this full self-driving. Now he says anyone can. Of course, probably one of the reasons he said anyone can because he's running out of money. And he wants to sell more stuff. So everybody can have it now. I changed my mind. And here's what they say. To me, it's ironic that I can't even get away with saying this crap. And I quote, Tesla says, full self-driving requires an attentive human driver prepared to take full control of the car at any moment. Well, then why is it called full self-driving? If somebody's got to pay attention to what it's doing. That's driving assist, which is what it should be called. Now, this was a Model S, super expensive one, right? Said it was going 55 miles an hour, then it switched to the left lane, and then slammed the brakes on, and then the cars behind them all smashed into it. These computers get confused. And of course, I guess their fail-safe software is, when confused, stop the car. Which, I guess it's okay if you're going 20 miles an hour, right? But on highway speeds, I don't know what to do. I'll stop the car. Boom, 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 boom. People generally aren't that stupid. I mean, the other day I saw some idiot going 30 in a 60 zone on the left lane of the highway, but I mean, I saw it ahead of time, so well, that guy's going too slow, and I just went the other way and got around him. On 3 lanes over, there's no way I'm going to get near that knucklehead, right? But the computers are confused. They don't know what to do. And then, boom, well, stop. We're confused. Boom, boom, boom. You can't, like I said, and this is the truth, you cannot have autonomous driving on any highway mixed with humans driving in the same highway. Humans, one, are a lot more unpredictable, and confused computers do stupid things like, we'll stop in the fast lane of the highway. You can't mix them. If they were all machines, fine. They could all talk to each other with 5G. 5G doesn't have a long length, but it goes at least like a quarter of a mile. So you know what's happening a quarter of a mile in front of you and a quarter of a mile back, so the computers can all talk to each other. But they're all going to have to be self-driving cars with these computer systems. You can't have humans in the mix, because then it'll just screw everything up, which this proves yet again. Will White says, Merry Christmas. Should I only use genuine Toyota transmission fluid when performing a flush, or can I use a Valvoline equivalent? Well, I kind of like the Toyota stuff for Toyotas, but realize Valvoline makes a good transmission fluid. That said, if you got a regular automatic transmission at Toyota, I've used the Valvoline, it worked fine. But if it was a CVT transmission, I would stick to the Toyota fluid. CVT transmissions are pretty stickler about whether they're going to work right or not. So if you got a CVT, my advice, the Toyota transmission fluid. They don't make it, somebody else makes it for them. But they're kind of sticklers. But the regular automatic transmission, you could use Valvoline, it's perfectly fine. Amy Ranta says, Scotty, I own a 2014 Kia, and I want to know how to tell if my radiator is frozen before I turn the key. Not a bad idea. If your stuff is frozen, you don't want to try to start the car because then things can snap, right? Take the radiator cap off. Stick your finger inside. If it's hard as a rock, it's frozen, wait till it warms up, or get a hairdryer and heat it up. Better to just let it warm up. You're supposed to have 50% water and 50% antifreeze in it. So if you don't, you want to let it warm up. And like I say, if you really want to go, you get a hairdryer and go around there and try to heat it up. Heather Tucker said, should you let your car warm up before you drive? Okay, there's all kinds of controversy about that. It's not a good idea normally to start your car, let it warm up for 5 or 10 minutes and then drive. Modern cars are fuel injected, everything's set up that you can start it up, let it warm up for 30, 40 seconds and drive. But take this morning, okay? I get up here in Clarksville, Tennessee, and the car's covered with ice and snow, right? Well, I started the car up. First, I wiped the snow off the door so it didn't fall on the seat. Then I started the car up and proceeded to go outside, clean it all off when I had all the defrosters on full blast. And I did wait 8 or 10 minutes because it was all ice. And I am too lazy to scrape all that ice off. So I let it warm up. The defroster got hot. It melted. Then I went out. But of course, that was a big mistake because we live in a top top of a hill. And it was fine going down the hill. But it goes down the hill to a little valley, then it goes up the other side of the hill. I made it about 3/4 of the way in the matrix. First it started sliding backwards, then it started sliding sideways, and I realized, well, I better just stop. I just held it straight until it stopped rolling sideways. Then I realized, okay, I'm just going to back down the hill, and I did. Then I went around the hill, because we live where there's a big hill, it goes down, it goes up, but you can also go around. So I went around. It was all ice. I don't have snow tires, even if I did. Wouldn't have helped on the ice, right? So when it's really cold and icy, you can warm it up, but you don't need to make a habit of it. Charlie McBride said, I got an oil change yesterday and found some water oil foam on my gas cap. What should I do now? Now, you said on your gas cap. I'm assuming you mean your oil cap on the engine. The gas cap where you put the gas in. You're not going to have oil and foam on it unless you got a real problem there. You're probably talking about your oil cap on your engine, right? And if that's the case, if you do not drive very far, your engine doesn't warm up enough, normally all that stuff will evaporate from the heat of the engine. And a lot of cars will just do that. I got customers that don't drive much. It's like that, and I tell them, look, don't worry about it, but you need to still change your oil. Even if you're only driving 1,000 miles a year, you got to at least change it once a year, right? The water and oil will build up. If you drive normal, or your car gets to operating temperature, all the water and stuff just boils out from the heat and it's gone. If you don't, it can create foam. Pray that's the problem, because if that's not the case, that means that your head gasket's starting to blow and it's throwing water into the engine oil, and then it foams up inside. So take a close look at your oil dipstick. If your head gasket's blowing, the oil in there will be all foamy like a milkshake, and that's bad news. You're going to have to tear the engine apart or get another car. A lot of it's normal in the winter if you don't drive all that much. It doesn't get hot enough to boil all the water out, and then the water will mix with the oil a little bit. Understand one thing, when you burn gasoline, you get heat coming out of the exhaust, but you also get water vapor. That's why you see a little water dripping out of the back of your car first thing in the morning, especially in the summer. That is a byproduct of combustion. You'll get a little bit of water vapor, and some of that stays in the engine if you don't warm it up. Here goes Issa. Scotty, my car is uneven wear on the tires. Do different suspension issues cause different types of wear on the tires? Yeah, you can sure bet they do. If your alignment is off, the tire's sitting odd, it'll either wear on the inside or the outside. If you don't have enough air in the tire, it'll wear on the outsides, and then the middle won't. If you have too much air, the middle will wear and the outsides won't. Let's say you got a bad ball joint that's on the bottom. Well, then the tire's going to sit odd way, and you'll get wear one side or the other. If your shocks are really worn out and it's bouncing around, you'll get cupped wear, and you'll see cupped wear on the edges of the tire. It'll be like scalloped potatoes. And then you'll know, ooh, I'm gonna have to fix that. Any good suspension guy can tell you when you see it, but you see odd wear, immediately go get something fixed, because one, you got a problem, and two, you're gonna destroy your tires that way too. Mr. Misa, Scotty, have you ever crashed a car? No, I've only been involved in fender benders where people ran into me. When I was a kid, I got hit by a snowplow that ran a red light in New York State, and the guy didn't even see me because I was in a little Opel. I had to chase him down the street and pull him and say, hey, you ran into me. What the heck's going on here? He claimed he didn't even hear anything. I don't know. It's always been people running into me rather than me running into people. And I've never crashed a motorcycle off. If I did, I probably wouldn't be here. Be careful in the snow and ice, let me tell you. You want to be really careful. David Gonzalez says, Scotty, what do you think of an '08 Tundra with a V6 engine? Are they any good? Thinking about getting one. 2008s were fine. Toyota makes good V6 engines. But what do you want to use the Tundra for? Grandson has one of those things, but it's got the V8. Buys trucks, cars, tows them with his big trailer. He needs a V8. If you're just driving around and you're not planning on towing heavy weights, you could tow, little boats and stuff, bass boats or stuff, small trailers. If you're happy with that, it could be an excellent vehicle. It's used, so have a guy like me check it out before you buy. But it could be still a pretty good vehicle. But if you want to pull a lot of heavy weight and stuff, you really want a V8. Jared Sheridan said, Scotty, I've been thinking about getting a Dodge Challenger 392 or a 5-liter Mustang. What do you think's better? In the long run, a 5-liter Mustang. The Dodge Challengers are extremely fast, but the Dodges, they fall apart as time goes on. Now, of course, Mustangs do to some extent too, but not as quickly as the Dodges do. The Dodges are notorious for falling apart as they age. And from my experience, usually the guys that get the Challengers, they beat them more than the guys that get Mustangs, and they tend to fall apart. And they're not made as well as the Mustangs, so they just generally fall apart faster anyways. Either way, if you're looking to get a used one, you want a guy like me to check it out, let me tell you. It could be ready to fall into the endless money pit, so have a guy check it out for you buy it. Brandon B says, Scotty, does AT205 work for rear main seals? Or is it easy on a 2005 Dodge Ram with a 4.7? Well, nothing's easy, because to get to the rear main seal of the engine, you got to pull the transmission out. You can also pull the engine out, but it's more work pulling the engine than it is pulling the transmission. It's very expensive. Now, I've seen it work. As long as the seal is still there and not ripped or torn, it can often work. It rejuvenates the rubber. What you do is First, change the oil and filter because you don't want to put any kind of sealer in dirty oil. It's dirty, more friction, it won't work as well. Put it in with clean oil. You might find it's a miracle. And if it does, hey, just buy a bottle every time you change the oil, because when you change the oil, the AT205 goes out with the oil and then you're starting all over again. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.